Karibu. Welcome back to Politically Connected. Have you guys missed us? I hope you have, because we have so much in store for you in the year of 2026, and we're just happy and blessed and honored to be sitting right in front of you guys because, hey, mambo ni mengi na masaa ni machache.
Get ready.
Have you guys missed us?
Unless a people believe in their country, you don't have a country.
Hata hiyo finance bill tulipitisha pole bila nini kupiga kelele.
This is how bad William is. Even Kalonzo was walking out at that time.
For him, this one-term thing is personal.
And who is inviting President Mike Kibaki to the KANU National Delegates Convention at Kasarani? We are currently the most organized political party in the country. So how is it that just 5 years later, it's TNA?
Kenya ni yetu na sisi ndio kusema. I'm your host, Diana Ngao,
aka Madam Speaker, and I am Chaka,
aka the Bishop. Now, we've started 2026 running. Ama, is it even being chased?
This is not even 2026, it is pre-2027.
Actually, that's the name of the year, pre-2027. Because 2026 ilisha hapo October 15th.
Yeah, and now campaigns are in high gear. We were just getting over the trauma of 2022. And now we are back in campaign mode.
Hey, speaking about the trauma of 2022, there's a certain someone who's been under heat talking about like what went wrong in 2022, Chaka. What went wrong?
What went right?
Yeah.
What went right? And it's interesting because this is we're going to be clocking 4 years later this year. And that lack of healing is part of the problem that we face as a country, because we still haven't healed from 2017. We still haven't healed from 2013. People still talk about 2007. We know when President Uhuru came in and the things they were supposed to do and the things they didn't do and who was supposed to get what. And now here we are in 2027, and it's only now that we are talking about 2022. And yet, those were some of the key issues of NADCO. One of the pillars of NADCO, was an audit of 2022
elections.
So, if, let's say you finish the audit on 2022, because it's not yet been done, and you're finishing the audit just before the 2027, we're in 2026, when do you implement?
There's no time for implementation. Ni kama ni unaoga, unarudi soko.
And why I'm saying that, the question, what exactly went right, is that we have the same problem with our audits even when we're looking at our budgets. We used audits from several years ago to even allocate
funds.
Yes.
And yet things have changed. And needs have changed.
So some of the things that we think are unique to certain areas, I'm starting to realize are endemic across the board. We have some serious issues that we need to have a family meeting.
I personally, I have not healed from 2022. When I saw the conversation around what happened with the agents, Junet, Saitabao, Mara Junet blaming Muhoho, man, my stomach was turning. I even put the phone down. I was like...
So now if you say you haven't healed from 2022 and we are not... Does SHA cover mental health?
I don't know.
One of the consequences of Saitabao Ole Kanchoro, my senior in the legal profession, coming out and having that tirade is, yes, it raised a red flag that things are going wrong. But the next day, is when you were seeing the likes of James Orengo, Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, and the likes, can't remember if
Even
Professor
Jeanette.
not able to access Bomas. And I remember it was a Sunday, because that happened on a Saturday night. It was a Sunday morning, and I remember having to get there very early in the morning because it was clear it was going to be shut down. And it helped certain powers that be take advantage of that fiasco the day before for security purposes
to restrict who's getting into Bomas. I remember I also had a struggle, and yet I had the verified tag as an observer.
Very senior people in Azimio were unable to
get
access. So such actions had consequences, which we're still not talking about.
And when you actually talk about the consequence, I'm now thinking about it from the lens of electoral justice. And what you said earlier is that we seem to not be healing from election by election, whether you are on the winning side or in the losing side. When you look at it from a compounding effect, we are all losers because we're not looking at what the problem is with our electoral cycle. There's a serious problem that's making Kenyans, all of us collectively, losers. Because here I am, 3 years after 2022, and I still feel like something was robbed from me. Like I feel a bit disillusioned by the process.
The question is, did we actually have elections?
No.
Yes, people voted. There was an announcement, because it's a question I keep asking. And I don't know if I'll ever tire to ask this question. How do you have more than half of an electoral commission composed of commissioners, and these are not politicians, they are not elected.
Yeah.
The process of appointing an electoral commissioner is actually very
thorough.
Very thorough. And this goes back to IPPG days, and so it was recognized that was a very serious issue.
For our younger viewers, what is IPPG?
Inter-Parties Parliamentary Group.
Yeah.
And this was a process. Now when we went into the multi-party era, post repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution, post 1992, there was a great feeling that you still don't have a multi-party democracy if you don't have a professionalized, independent electoral referee.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you notice, IEBC is actually a post-2010 phenomenon, because you had the ECK before that, you had the interim independent electoral IEBC with Isaac Hassan. So this is a conversation that started
in the 90s.
In the multi-party era, but even before that, remember we had the Mlolongo issues where people were being counted physically. So we have the semblance now of institutions, but what is it to have that in paper? If now, when you're announcing the results, half the commission is somewhere else saying
we denounce those results. It was really such a mind-boggling situation for me. I mean, as someone who campaigned for the Azimio, it's really. I was really questioning a lot of things, and I was wondering why they are not taking it seriously. I felt like I was going mad. And now that brings me now to even here today when I hear Saitabao and now Junet and this spat back and forth. And to it, we must get them as guests here to answer some of these questions. And I'm wondering, we are 1 year to an election. Are we ready?
Some people are.
Yeah, I mean, ODM says they're going to form government or be in the next government. Speaking of which, by the way, we were meant to have the governor of Mombasa, who's also the deputy party leader of ODM.
Of ODM.
As a guest here today, however, watu wakubwa saa zingine, they get diverted hapa kule, labda alienda State House.
See, labda alienda State House.
Alienda State House.
So maybe they're still negotiating coalition manenos. Yeah. We don't know. But he'll tell us when he comes. Hopefully he will join us.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, we're now getting to that point of whether they are going to form government, not form government. I'm like, people are ready for 2027, but are they credible?
Which people are ready for 2027?
ODM or half of ADM. I'm not even sure. Okay, some
The people who are ready for 2027 are the ones who are making the least noise but gaining the most traction.
Kama nani chaka?
For example, you know, one of the things that I give UDA tremendous credit for is the operational efficiency with which they run their 2022 machinery. There are questions of ethics that still remain on how some things were done, but they were focused and they were effective. I'll give credit where it's due. And I'll tell you what that has taught me now as I observe them. We are currently the most organized political party in the country. Currently.
I would say, and I don't know whether you're ready to hear this. I would not call them a political party. I'd call them an election engine.
Very well said.
So they are an organized election engine. Whether they are a political party, well, I feel like the jury is still out, because political parties are formed with how they are formed and even the structures. I don't see that with UDA. I see almost like an autocratic sort of party. And maybe that's what even makes it more efficient in their election management. So I'd be like, I agree. Like, even what we learned about what they did in 2022,
Yes.
They were an effective, well-oiled machine. They had foot soldiers, no question asked, do this, run with this. Like, they were getting
Very
to place.
regimented.
I even remember there are times where we'd go in a campaign in a certain area, and the next day they're coming to sufficient everything that we've said. I mean, to have that that level of and them being the underdogs, because I mean, we had the then president backing us. I mean,
Current
current
of the time.
It
And you
was
know
a slip
why
of the tongue.
that analysis is excellent, is actually points to one of the challenges we have with our criticisms of the current president and his regime, and why we then struggle to catch up. I'm not even sure who we is. I think in terms of the rest of us who are trying to make sense
Of what's
as a
happening,
country, is we sometimes analyze, not sometimes, often, most times, analyze things based on how we would have them be or how they should be, and not dealing with the world as it is. And they deal with the world as it is. Because lately I've been reflecting, and it seems that in what is now the opposition, or anyone who is opposed to the president and the current regime, it feels like it's just one huge exercise in trauma bonding. Yeah, like, because it seems the agenda is, this is how bad William is.
Well, I think that Kenyans also haven't seen anything worse than William, or maybe the new generation that is coming of age when William Ruto's regime came of age, and they're seeing all these things happening and it's hurting them. I mean, for them, this is the first time. Like, the people who went on the streets on 24th, most of them, majority of them, it was their first time on the streets protesting. And, you know, they felt like they have won something, only to see it. When was it that they said, hata hiyo finance bill tulipitisha pole pole bila nyinyi kupiga kelele. Like, I mean, they weren't alive to the fact, the plays of politics, but they were excited. So when
It's not just politics, real politics.
Yeah. So when we're saying that the agenda is William Ruto is the worst, I mean, in the current reality, without looking back in Kenyan's time, He's currently the worst we've ever had.
There are those who were detained under Moi
Yes.
who would have a view on that. There are those who lost out during the Kenyatta regime who would have a view on that. There are those who were traumatized during the Uhuru regime who would have a view on that. And it seems that what this new young generation, though experiencing it for the first time, as you
Yeah.
rightly said, is that they've taken over a culture that has really been there for quite some time, and yet taking it over in a time when so much is democratized.
You mean like a culture of personalities, like this is the problem, this person, he's our
Yes.
boogeyman,
Yes.
and we must get him out, and that will be the end of all our problems.
Yeah, because a part of my view is that in our analysis of the state of the nation
Yeah.
as a country, in our analysis, we need to go beyond President William Ruto.
Absolutely, I agree, because if you look at even how counties are run, really, whether William Ruto was a president or Raila Odinga was a president, counties are the real mess. Like, I mean, how are counties not spending more on recurring expenditure than development? You know,
And it's endemic across the board.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm thinking whether niende
Toboa.
hapo, wacha tu niende.
Toboa.
Yeah. When the building that collapsed in Nairobi, I was just so perplexed that it is the governors of Northeastern region coming to speak on this. And you know, for me, like, there've been issues in terms of how Northeastern is underdeveloped, and that is even why we had the equitable, what is it?
Fund. Equalization fund.
Equalization fund, so that they can get a bit more because they were so far behind. But it seems that some of these governors, I don't know, and it's allegedly, but it looked like their interest is more here where their investment is than in where they're supposed to be. Like, it's just so disheartening seeing how counties are being run, and then now majority of people are focusing on the man at the top and forgetting that your governor, your MCA are the people who have an immediate effect to how you live, your livelihood.
And beyond that, also, it's not just our elected officials.
Yeah.
We may also need to have a broader conversation about our other. It's in our analysis generally as a country, many of our institutions are neglected. We don't realize the breadth and depth of government. Like, if you were to ask the average person, how many state corporations and parastatals are there, and yet they each have functions? How many, under each ministry? What are they supposed to be achieving, and how are we holding them accountable?
But by the way, that I fault the education system, because back then when sisi tulikuwa tunafanya GHC, we knew all of them. We knew the MPs, we knew the ministers. That's why we can remember Kibaki's cabinet. We can remember who was the MP for this area. We can remember them because, I mean, we can remember what happened during the 90s, even though it was whitewashed a bit. We can remember the 90s, the 80s, the coup. We can remember our Attorney General, the late Charles Jonjo. Like, these are names that we can say even if we were not of age. Because our education system then was giving us, I cannot say perfect, but a little bit of civic education. Right now, our education, what are they teaching? Since devolution in 2010, like, why is it that the people who are being churned out of our education system are not being taught these things?
Now,
how does devolution help them? How does it work?
The challenge then, especially now for Gen Xers and millennials,
is to catch up.
Who went through that education system, who should therefore be aware of these structures. What are we doing or even saying about it?
As we have become people, we are fans. We are fans of political personalities.
Yes.
We are not fans of institutional building, country building. We are just fans of, it's seeming to be like more of like a personality.
So now, taking it back to the 2022 conversation, that's why then when we think about elections, we think about the personalities who are running, and then we ignore the institutional infrastructure of the electoral system. Why? Because we're still focusing on the cult of the personalities
And
not even thinking,
the
for
vehicle
instance,
that's taking us.
because the election has already started.
Yeah.
That process has already begun.
Yeah.
And the vigilance therefore begins now.
Yeah.
Not when you've cast your vote and gone home to sit.
Tallying from
and,
34 eights.
we now ask each other, hey, who do we think amepata ngapi, tally imefika wapi? That is a voting. So that problem now, when you even now look at other sectors and other issues, we'll look at the boogeyman and not look at a lot of the institutional infrastructure underlying it to unearth what are the decisions, choices, the history, the trajectory, where are the weaknesses, where are the challenges, or is it just a one-word trauma bond that we, for example, take something like SHA. You ask the average person, SHA, buyer. But what is SHA? Can we talk about the effort at universal health coverage and understand that the larger conversation around that?
I have a problem. I see the effort, but I have a problem of the how. Because it makes no sense to try have such a great idea. I think we spoke about this before. Have such a great idea, but not care about how it's done. Because the how it's done is what secures the dignity of the people.
Yes.
So whether SHA was this great idea to ensure universal health coverage, how it's been implemented is the problem. And I think also thinking about how I see President William Ruto is that he's a revisionist. When I say a revisionist, is that what Uhuru started or what was there, he will revise it, anaosha anaeka kwa omo, alafu anasema, hey guys, it's now not NHIF, it's SHA.
DJ Kasongo on the deck.
And there were issues with NHIF, yes, but it was working. It was working for most people. There were issues, yes, and only if we had sealed the leakages of an NHIF and the corruption that was going in between claims and the hospital, I think they could have come with that energy instead of investing a whole 104 billion. It seems it is a lot of money, but I'm just like, for it not to have been implemented that well, then it was more a focus of like, I have this great idea that I want to implement and I don't care about how, because I want all the praise to be like, guys, see, I did it.
And you see, part of the culture is, and again, which is why I'm saying that we need to go beyond William. Now looking at it, President William, now that we look at it in this situation, in this universal health coverage conversation, there is this culture you'll notice also of overhaul. That if something is not working, overhaul it. So it's not even unique to the current president, because and that's even why when we're looking at regime change, it's overhaul. Because we feel that put someone new and the problems will be fixed, but we're not looking at the rot that's underneath. And I'll give you an example. An overhaul that happened in another sector is the issue of the currencies. We introduced an entire new currency.
What year was that?
It was under Uhuru's regime. And it was targeted, again, from what we learned, at a few people. And there was a problem. But you see, the solution was overhaul. So you see this being education. There's a problem.
Overhaul it.
Yeah.
And now we even have a bigger problem.
And when we overhaul, we're not taking the time to ask ourselves, wait, this thing we are overhauling, what were the issues to ensure that it's not being repeated under a new system? Because at the end of the day, whether you have the best new IT system in place, whether you have a person who learned finance in a seminary, ultimately, you're going to have a team of Kenyans across the board, because it's not one single person or one single system that runs it, right? It's you're still going to have people, the people who are working under NHIF are working under SHA.
Under SHA.
Right? So, and you can only overhaul so much until you come and deal with that reality.
When did this overhauling start? Because as you're talking, I was just thinking about the Kibaki regime, like not regime, administration. Mi nitawapatia nini heshima zao. Kibaki said there'll be free education.
Yes.
And when he came after he was sworn in 2002, that January, kids, like there was a crisis that there were not enough classrooms to hold the children come join in schools. We had I remember the videos of all the kids who had never been to school who are now joining class 1 for the first time. How did they do it? We were having a conversation earlier when we were talking about Karisa Maitha, who was in health, and how he was able to streamline this. We had John Mishuki in transport, and all of a sudden we were talking about Mishuki rules because you all have to have a seat belt. We had Martha, who was in water, and we saw the reforms that happened in just the 3 years before even now we got to the referendum. What was different? Because, I mean, they're coming from the backdrop of Moi, right? Like, what was different with this team, or rather this administration, that now, or what is that? I'm just trying to understand.
I'm actually happy you've asked that question, because remember, a core pillar of democracy is representation. And these leaders at the time were...
they were members of parliament as well.
But they were representing also, because even in doing all these things, remember, whether you have a Karisa Maitha, he's not doing it alone. Whether you have a Martha Karua, she's not doing it alone. Whether you have a John Mishuki, he's not doing it alone. You have an entire civil service that has to respond to your leadership. When Kibaki and the NAC movement, because it was a movement, came into power, we were polled globally as the happiest, or one of the happiest nations in the world. And hope as an ingredient, happiness as an ingredient of hope. Right? So people were hopeful. They believed. That's why even policemen were being arrested by citizens. Because they believed in their country. And you see, part of the social contract, part of that constitutional mandate, is that unless a people believe in their country, we don't have a country. Because a country is not a thing unto itself. So it's constituted by the people. So at that time, we had a populace that was responsive to a leadership. But now if you have a civil service that is cynical in itself, it doesn't matter how excellent the person at the top is, they cannot implement it by themselves. And that's why I'm saying we need to have a broader conversation beyond, because the president alone is not the country. The president alone is not the government.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference between then and now. Now, people in the civil service, I hazard to say, are even afraid to act because they don't want to take the flack or the blame or the fall. So they kick it up to a higher leadership or kick it down the road so that they don't have to deal with it.
So there's no, they don't want the buck to stop with them. And
that is a problem of country. It's the health and the psychology, the spirit of the times is in serious HDU or
our
ICU.
vitals are not looking good.
We're not doing too well.
So are you saying like we don't have a country, or we might not have a country, or
I'm saying we are in HDU or ICU.
Our country is in HDU.
We still have a country. We have a country because there are people who are willing to come out to make noise about issues. We have a country because our natural instinct is self-preservation, and that self-preservation extends to preservation of our communities, our societies.
Yeah.
The problem arises now that when that self-preservation starts seeing my neighbor as the immediate threat, as opposed to an external beyond the borders of Kenya as a threat, and the real enemies being what our founding fathers told us: poverty, disease, and ignorance. Those are supposed to be
ujinga, umaskini na ugonjwa.
ugonjwa. And when the other community or my next door neighbor or this person in leadership from that community starts becoming the threat, then we start imploding.
And I'm wondering when this tribal talk came. I mean, because we've come so far from 2007, and coming from the backdrop also of 2024, where the Gen Zs were like, we're leaderless, we're tribeless, and we're partyless. But just 2 years, okay, barely 2 years from 2024, you're just hearing people like, ni Wakikuyu this, ama ni wa this, oh, these people want nini. We have, do you want me to say it? I'm from the coastal region, but I have to say this. We have a function of coastal leaders saying that, you know what, it is our time. And I'm wondering, when did we get to this point that the country is so fragmented, when we had moved so far beyond 2007, and now it seems like we are reliving the times leading to 2007 with so much talk of tribalism, mtu wetu,
it's because
ethnicity.
we didn't deal with actually the underlying issues. What we had after 2007 was partially a partial dealing with the symptoms, but in some issues it was still cosmetic. Because, and it's the same thing even with this Gen Z crisis.
Yeah.
We still haven't dealt with the issues that were being raised. And it's something that had been seen even during Kibaki's time, when
kicked the can down the
Peter
road.
Kenneth was assistant minister for planning, right? When we still had the Ministry of Planning, and it wasn't just a state department under Treasury. He was assistant minister for planning. And that issue of the youth bulge had been seen. People say it was Uhuru's regime that spotted it, but it had been identified.
Seen.
So some of these things bubble under the surface until they come to a point of then imploding. So 2007, 2008 forced us, that crisis forced us to have a meeting. That meeting resulted in 2010, but a conversation that had started since Lancaster.
Yeah.
Right?
Change the constitution movement.
Yeah, because one of the things that were happening during Lancaster was, what form of government are we adopting, and what impact is it going to have in terms of, because remember, we are a community of nations. So these are many nations being brought together. And the colonial administrations, in large part, had a huge say in drawing our boundaries.
Yeah.
So through happenstance, through political negotiation, through convenience, through scramble and partition, we end up with this, political experiment called Kenya, out of the British East African Protectorate. And so when we go to Lancaster, part of the contention, KANU is pulling one way, KADU is pulling another way, in terms of what mode of government are we going to have. And it's a reflection of how are we sharing power and how are we sharing resources critically. And that then
began
after, and you have a lot of changes happening since then under the KANU regime, because people may not know that immediately after we gained independence, we even had a Senate.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah, we had, like, for example, somebody like, take Eugene Wamalwa.
Yeah.
His dad, also Michael Kijana Wamalwa's dad, was a senator, right, under that old order. But you have power being clawed back into the center.
Yeah.
Then by the time we are getting to now the reforms of the late 80s and the early 90s and the repeal of Section 2A and the clamor for constitutional change, and by the time we end up with that draft in 2005,
yeah.
which is then rejected, and we have the things exploding in 2007,
Yeah.
and we have a draft in 2010, but even that draft in 2010, I was there at
Uhuru Park.
At Uhuru Park, in the crowd, and Raila was saying tutaipitisha venye iko. That time it's promulgation, so
Yeah.
it is not campaigning, but he has been saying it even during the campaigns for the constitution, that tupitishe venye iko, tutarekebisha baadaye. So it was recognized even by the proponents that there were issues that were outstanding. And I remember William Ruto and the likes of Pogisio, who were in the red team, the no team, say no, that there's issues that are remaining. No, let's resolve them now before we pass it. But there was such huge frustration coming from 2007 and the Kofi Annan process, feeling like if we don't do this now, we are facing another 2007 at the next elections.
Yeah.
So zile tutarekebisha baadaye are some of the issues that we are now seeing in BBI and NADCO. And what that tells us is that those issues are not yet fully resolved. And it's part of the problems that we are now facing.
You know, as you are talking and you just mentioned that Raila being one of the propagators of the 2010, it's no longer new. We keep saying the new constitution. It's no longer new. It's 15 years.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that it is the first time since our country was born that we started the year without such a figure of the Odinga family, such a magnanimous figure, political figure or father in the race. And that also shows me it's telling me why we are so fragmented. Because a lot of things were dichotomous. It was, what is Raila saying about this? Or back then, what is Jaramogi saying about this? What is Kenyatta saying about this? And now, years down the line, it is, what is Raila saying about this? So that I can make a decision for myself, right, as a Kenyan. And now we've entered pre-2027, because tumesema hakuna 2026. We're entering pre-2027, and we're already seeing fragments and flares being thrown from different sides. We are seeing a section of ODM talking about forming in government, forming coalitions with the ruling party, which is UDA. And then we have the heir, did I say heir? The heiress of Raila Odinga, and basically all of them, because it's Raila Jr. and Winnie come out from the woodworks. I can't say the woodworks because they have been in the background of their father's political journey, but show up in his bedroom, because they used to say Kibra is his bedroom, and be like, you cannot copy-paste Baba and let us go to a national delegates conference.
Baba was one in a million. Hatutampata mwingine. Na vile vile hauwezi copy-paste Baba. Huwezi copy-paste the greatest leader Kenya has ever seen. Atunabadilisha na huyu, ati sasa tuko na Baba. No, haiwezi kuwa hivyo. Ya pili, tuende hii NDC. Na kwenye hii NDC, mambo itakuwa noma. Mko tayari? Mko tayari? Wangapi wako tayari? Asanteni.
It excited me, to say the least, because to me I was just like, finally now we are seeing some action. But I'm just here thinking, I'm like, what happens to our, I'm not a member of ODM, but they really held a large section of our political, I can't imagine an election without such a vibrant party. But the way it's looking right now, Chaka, I said UDA is an
election engine, an electoral engine. Very well put.
ODM is a political party. It has its issues in terms of when it comes to nominations and stuff. You'll hear ODM has its issues, But the whole point of a political party is also representation, and they have one of the largest databases following from Mombasa to Kisumu, Kisumu to Mandera. And when we see how this political party, which has been feted to be one of the greatest political parties in East and Central Africa, after Baba's passing, I'm like, hey, tutawezana 2027 kweli. What are your thoughts?
Ultimately, a political party is a feature of representative democracy.
Yeah.
And a political party is supposed to be a vehicle that channels the hopes and aspirations of the represented to crystallizing their vision for country. Because at the end of the day, a country is sustained through a social contract, that this is what we agree our country is, and this is what we agree about who we are, and who we want and hope to be. And the political party is a vehicle to bring together a modicum of like-mindedness. That you don't have to agree on everything, but your ideas and my ideas are like enough that we can accommodate a common vision for country. And what we are seeing now in ODM, which leaves me with doubts about its future, is a lack of cohesion. Because that lack of cohesion reflects a lack of like-mindedness, and people now reverting to, these are our interests as people of coasts, these are our interests as people of Nyanza, these are our priorities as people of Western, these are our interests as the Maasai nation.
And that's why I'm asking that balkanization of corners, like coast. And by the way, I would really love to see a coastarian rise to the rank of presidency. I mean, for a community that has also been very marginalized, I would, but a credible one. It shouldn't be auctioned as a auction. If anything, when I saw what happened, was it 7th of January? If I had a chance to call one of those coastal leaders and tell them, you have a whole base, form a political party and stop holding it ransom, holding the current one ransom. Just, why not form it? Why not? We are in a multi-party democracy. Why not form it and go and negotiate what you want at whatever negotiation table that comes up?
And the risk there is that it then embeds that problem of regionalism, because even when you go within coast, you have several counties within coast.
That's true.
Then they will also say that sisi watu wa Kilifi, we have our own interests. Let's also now. So it's a challenge, and actually the greater, more noble one is to, despite those challenges, to try and stick to sustaining a common union. And you see, unfortunately, part of this is not something that we have failed to see before. What we are seeing in ODM happened with Ford Kenya.
And Fort Kenya was Wamalwa's.
Wamalwa was taking over from Jaramogi. Yeah, and it is because the late Michael Kijana Wamalwa had gotten the blessings from Jaramogi.
And not Raila.
And Raila hadn't gotten. So Raila then went to form NDP or LDP, one of the two. So that fragmentation, and that's then you had various Ford factions being formed. So this experiment in achieving unity, we saw the Mugumo that would never be cut down, Kanu, also imploding. And that was a national party, because Kanu had actually even been formed through the merger of Kanu and Kadu. And the collapse of Kanu, in large part, people might argue about it, happened when you had the huge walkout in the lead up to 2002. When the Kanu rebels then went and joined NAK,
Yeah,
National Alliance of Kenya, to form the
NAC.
National Rainbow Coalition.
NAA.
And remember, even at that point, KANU was new KANU. Because
walikuwa na
KANU
rebrand
had merged with NDP. Yeah.
Oh yeah, jogoo ilikuwa imemeza tinga.
Ikapata constipation. And then
is that the same thing that will happen to UDA or DM?
Now, but you see, the vibrance of UDA is different because UDA, unlike KANU, is in its formative stages.
Yeah.
KANU was holding on to what it was. And then you had a number of people who, at one time, it could not have been imagined that they would walk away from President Daniel Arap Moi. When you had the late Vice President George Saitoti, one of the longest, if not the longest serving vice president in the history of Kenya, standing up and saying, there come a time when the nation is more important than an individual.
There come a time when the nation is more important than an individual.
And he walks out, and then you have, even Kalonzo was walking out at that time, right? When he was following, Raila was walking out, because Raila was actually the Secretary General
of KANU.
Right? You had, and you asked, I think when we were having a discussion, where did this coastal following for Raila come from?
Yeah.
And I think in part it's because when you had the likes of even, I believe, Katana Ngala at the time walking away, son of Ronald Ngala, then you had quite a shift in consciousness in the nation. And then you have Uhuru Kenyatta now leading KANU
the flag bearer,
together with William, President William now at the time, and then and KANU may have survived. Again, it can be argued, but then why does Uhuru Kenyatta? Because remember that by the time we're going to 2007, 2008, KANU is supporting PNU. And who is inviting President Mwai Kibaki to the KANU National Delegates Convention at Kasarani? It was a leader of official opposition and soon-to-be Deputy Prime Minister, Uhuru Kenyatta. Because there is a party leader of KANU. So how is it that just 5 years later, it's TNA that is running on? Why not KANU?
And actually, how come? Because when they formed NAC, it was a coalition of parties, right? And the Mwai Kibaki's party was DP.
Yes.
How did it now become PNU?
So now PNU was formed as a party for the 2007 elections. And it's one of the challenges. In fact, one of the things that NADCO is pushing for is party discipline. So that we don't have political parties as this outfit. But also because now when people win on a certain party, they then, cross over and the like. So that was a huge problem. So you have Uhuru Kenyatta then wrestling for the KANU leadership stroke ownership with?
William Ruto.
No. With Gideon Moi.
Oh, with Gideon Moi.
And I remember when, Nick Salat, even, it was on camera, and he was trying to get who not to sign it off and leave and go and run with TNA. But, and why part of why we recall that is, after that, KANU has never been the same. So you're starting with that great walkout, and then now the leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, the son of Jomo, is walking out, and it's left with, then it makes me, so as I was watching what was happening in Kibra, and remembering what's happening with Ford Kenya, and Ford Kenya is splitting because, so I'm like, there's a pattern here.
Chapa.
And you see, you call her an heiress.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I won't lie. I kind of feel like I am more willing to. I'm more siding with. I mean, this is. I'm not a member of that party, so
Yeah.
my views don't matter here.
Yeah.
But I must say them because they're unsolicited. I'm kind of siding with Winnie here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, she has grown at the feet of her father, one of the greatest politicians we've had, political fathers we've had. Not just in Kenya, in Africa. Like when he passed on, you're getting condolences from across the world. Like Raila has had his, like Yani, in history, when the history books read, they will not miss his name a couple of times. So for Winnie to have also, I mean, Winnie and Rosemary and Junior to have learned from such nini, I'm like, kuna kitu msichana anajua na amepata kutoka babake, and I'm like, yeah. If I was a ODM member, because I am not, ningekuwa bana, undu kusema. I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's the nostalgia that brings back Baba, because also when she was speaking, it kind of sounded like there's something she said, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's how Baba would say it. Maybe it's a nostalgia that I'm running on, but I feel another thing that also is making me side more with that side.
Yeah.
This is very unsolicited, guys. I have to keep saying that. I have my own party I can talk about. Is that ODM has been, not only just ODM, a lot of political parties have in the most recent past disenfranchised young political leadership from gaining the reins of actual decision making in the party. You're seeing them always pushed aside. And that's why we're seeing the restless, young and restless Babu Owino, who has always seemed to be put on the, on the Nini side. He's always been put on the side only when it's now time to talk to vijana ndio analetwa mbele. We're seeing the restless, or not restless, but his farm, Sifuna. And then what we're seeing on this other side of this other ODM is a older generation, salt and pepper on their facial expressions, but it doesn't connect to the current generation now. And I don't think they realize that. If I was them, ningekumbatia the ones that connect with the current generation and try and see how we can unify both. I'm not saying we do away with the old, because just like our guest here, Dr. Mukisa Kitui says, we need each other, both the older generation and the younger generation. But there seems to be stuck, or let me say constipation, a bit constipation, because the moment we are in is a transitional moment, not just in the political party of ODM, even in Kenya. Ever since we crossed 2022, I feel like these years have just been a transitional years where we are being forced to move from the old order of how things are done and being pushed into this new order, because these young kids, these Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas that come after them, they are hungry, they are restless, and they are disenfranchised. They can't imagine that they are not able to get the same opportunities their parents or their grandparents got. So the anger and the energy is there, but our current political leadership is unable to identify that and connect with it. Because there are people in every political party, leave alone ODM, there are very many Winnies. When I say Winnies and Babus, I mean like in terms of age, who have the ability to, and even the drive and the want to step into leadership. But they are being told, apana, wachia uyu.
One of the features of politics in Kenya and the world over is that it's very rare that political power is given.
It must be grabbed.
Yeah, it's
and
taken. And in the instances where it is given, it is almost seen as repulsive, because then that person is being imposed. And that's what happened with Uhuru Kenyatta. It was given to him.
Yeah.
And he had to fight his way to
Yeah,
earn
to
some
earn
respect
some
by the time we're
respect.
getting to 2013.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and it's the same thing with Ford Kenya.
Yeah. Raila had
Raila
to
Odinga, it wasn't given
easy.
to him.
Yeah.
And all through, it was never given to him. He'd come in and take, or put himself in a position where, and it's the nature of politics. And so I think that that part of, again, it's the third time I think I'm talking about representative democracy in this episode. One of the features of representative democracy is participation, right?
Are people participating? No, they are not. They are viewing.
Yeah.
It's just like sitting back and watching it as if your future doesn't depend on.
But then the frustration boils over in the moment of complaining. You didn't do, you should have done, but where were we? Yeah. And that participation is part of the argument I'm making. It shouldn't be momentary.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be revisited only at the
Towards-
fifth year.
yeah, towards
That
an
participation is supposed to be continuous in the life of the republic. It's continuous in terms of, and that's part of one of the features of devolution, isn't just in devolving power and resources, it's also in devolving responsibility. And why I really love Article 3, that every citizen has a duty to defend that constitution. And part of that duty to defend is a duty to participate.
Yeah.
And why I think for ODM as well, there's really no meaningful discussion that can be had about ODM without an NDC. Because NDC is a forum for participation. That's where I agree with Winnie, and that's where I agree with some of that faction. One thing I will say about that curious feature about age, I think part of the reason that discussion is taking that direction is because of the people at the helm of those quote-unquote factions.
Yeah.
At the helm of one faction is Oburu Oginga.
Yeah.
At the helm of this other faction is the likes of Caleb Misi, Sifuna,
Yeah.
Babu Owino, and Winnie. But on both sides, you actually have participation across age.
Yeah.
Because on this side of Akina Sifuna and the like,
Yeah.
you have the Orengos.
Yeah.
You had a very strong statement coming from Millie Mabona Odhiambo about the future of the party.
Yeah.
On this other side, you have the likes of Senator Kajwang, right? And he was speaking really about the future of
the
ODM
party,
during, and I think if I'm not wrong, it was when they went to Western. So on both sides of the divide, you have a crosscut of age, and it's because there are people with different views and priorities. There are those for whom I think on one side, they're like, the most pragmatic path forward is to work with the bird in the hand, which is worth two in the bush. And on this other side, you have an idealism that is saying, this is not what we stand for. And
Would you call it idealism?
I think so, because part of their language is speaking to the identity of ODM.
Yeah.
Speaking to what is it that we agreed we are going to do. Did we? Yes, we said we are going to, Baba took us to have a discussion on a 10-point agenda, but was that tantamount to agreeing on whether we are going to support his candidature in 2027? And those issues revolve around what is it that we want and what we stand for as a party. So that's why some people are talking about betrayal on both sides of the divide. And they are using Baba's name to say, no, this is what we agreed. No, this is what we agreed.
This is what he said.
Yeah.
This is what he said. I was the last person to talk to him.
Exactly. So on this side, they're purist about the identity of ODM, that's why they're saying things like, the party has been sold. Because you don't sell an idea, you sell a vehicle. Yeah. So they are anchored in that idealism. But even on this side, I believe there are opportunists who know very well that unless they stand, quote unquote, on their own, they may not have as much of a place
inside this other side.
Yes.
But I mean, when it comes to politics, people get into politics also for their own interests.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whether their own interest is connected to also what the community interest is or the people interest is. I mean, that's what make the difference between politicians, because you can see politicians who did come in with their community interest that was also their personal interest. However, I think my assessment of all this is that it's still that transitional period where the Kenya that we have right now under William Ruto, or where we've gotten to right now under President William Ruto, is not the same Kenya. And even the world and everything that's shifting, it's not the same world. And it's requiring us to look inside and actually like, what do we stand for? How are we going to solve these problems? And I feel like that's a crisis ODM is facing, because even within their own members, they're also asking themselves, because before they had this root that was Raila Amolo Odinga, and now that root is no more. So they're just here like, Baba used to do the thinking for us. If he says this side, we go. And right now they're like, we have not been used to thinking for 20 years. We have not been used to. I'm not saying all of them. Like, I'm just saying, like, Raila made decisions, of course, in consultation with his members. Because Raila was always, one thing I've seen through Raila's political career, he was always on the side of where the people were. Like, if you see even how he morphed himself after the walkout of NDP, he even resigned from Member of Parliament in Lang'ata because he came in under Ford Kenya and went back to seek a re-election with his new party. Like, he's always been with the people. So when you see now this, I mean, I think they're actually having if it was a human...
existential crisis.
Exactly. But it also talks about it's a reflection of the crisis we're having here in the country. It's 100% a reflection. The same arguments they're having within that party is the same arguments we're having, if you look at it very clearly, between one term and two term. It's, by the way, I know people would see it as there's no agenda to it, there's nothing, it's either one term, people just want to remove William Ruto, and this other side that people just want William Ruto to continue. But if you look at and examine it very closely, that is a decision that can actually change the trajectory of your life. I was talking to a man who said how he had really, he really enjoys, I mean, he really gets shocked when people talk about how Kibaki was the worst president or a tribal president. Where for him, if it was not for the free primary education, he was a street boy. He was a street boy at 10 years, selling things in Mukuru, Wajenga, and Mudhurwa market. And because of now that sweep of 202, where now street children are being picked up and taken to school by the government, he would have not been where he is today. However, in this same age where he's gotten to, I could guess like he's probably in his late 30s, early 40s. He's gotten to a place where sasa anajitegemea, he has businesses. And Chaka, somehow, he's part of part of his businesses have been destroyed or been demolished by the demolition that's happening in Mukuru, Wajenga. So for him, this one-time thing
the Nairobi Regeneration Program.
For him, this one-time thing is personal. So when people say that this guy's for one term, it's easy to sensationalize this question. But if you look at it carefully, where it has this one term, two term should force us to have a conversation of the Kenya we want. Because there are two different ideologies here in terms of what is making people say one term and what is people making people say two term. But I don't think we are ready to have those conversations, because even the people at the helm of one term are they're not orphans, but their children, their lineage is from back then, where the status quo remained the status quo. I don't think we're ready to have those questions that will undo some of the core things that made Kenyan politics. Because I'm still saying we are in a transitional period. And by the way, President William Ruto kind of knows this. Because once they started with this thing, tunaenda Singapore, we are moving from third world to first world. It's also signifying the transitional period that we are in Kenya and East Africa and even the rest of the world. However, my friends, back to what you've said, Chaka, if we're not the ones to answer that question on the direction we are going, kama tunaenda Singapore, ama tunaenda mahali pengine, Canaan, ama we are going, I don't know. If we are not the ones to answer that question as the people of Kenya, and we leave it to...
We are going to change this country. Believe you me. Hii nchi tutaibadilisha. We have what it takes as a nation. There is no reason why we cannot catch up with Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea. There is no reason.
If you're not part of the conversation, you're on the table.
So when we're busy here saying Singapore, sawa, that's a good aspiration. But pay attention.
It's Singapore.
Oh, Singapore. Oh, yeah. We have to pay attention to the details. We have to pay attention to agree. Like, it sounds great, but the devil is in the details. It is how they're going to do it. It is who they're going to put in charge to take us to that place that they're saying that Kenya can be a first world. I mean, it's not, it can't just be this sensational hope, like, yes, we can kind of moment. And I hope Kenyans can understand that we really need to be more vigilant than before. Yani, I was seeing this guy who was walking around giving constitutional books to saying that the constitution should be taught in schools. Maze, if I was a millionaire, billionaire, ningemprintia hizo vitabu zote nipeleke shule zote.
Hata kila mtu 40, 50, 60, I don't know how many we are now. Kila mtu akipatiwa tutazisoma. That's a question, because there are many people who have them on their shelves. And the thing about Singapore is that sometimes when these conversations are being had, you see, there's something that, although it was a failed experiment, there's something that Mwalimu Nyerere understood. And he understood issues to do with society, culture, human dignity. And that's part of where Ujamaa was, idealistic as it was. I completely empathize. I don't necessarily agree because of my own political philosophy and views and observations about human nature. It may not be workable. But the principles underlying it, again, the problem there was the how. But the principles were sound. Because when you ask most people, when they hear this Singapore and how it looks like and what they imagine it to be, even if you have renditions of a Kenya that is Singapore, it's buildings, it's roads, it's infrastructure,
that just looks so wow.
It's brick and mortar. The challenge is that you can have even the most quote unquote advanced economies, because you have ghost towns, for example, in China, where they have the infrastructure, but nobody is living. Why? Because
they actually have ghost towns.
Yes, well-built structures, and yet there are other places where people are homeless.
Yeah.
And it's in part it's a philosophical and economic problem, because the question is, this gentleman you were talking about, who was crediting free education under Kibaki to where he is now, and what he has built for himself has been demolished in the name of Nairobi Regeneration Program. Why? So that we can have a clean river, which is a sound policy, I agree. which we can have Nairobi River back to life and
Beautification,
beautification and the
yeah.
like. But what is a beautiful Nairobi without its people? What is a beautiful
Country,
Kenya without its people? The true measure should be quality of life. And when I say quality of life, I don't just mean pocket. I mean quality. And now the true measure of hospitals is access to
healthcare.
quality, affordable healthcare. And even that access means not just being able to arrive at the door of it, means how you're being received when you're getting there, whether you're able to access a doctor, whether you're able to access medicine, how fast you're being seen, what are the waiting times. So that's part of access. How far do you have to travel to get that healthcare? That's part of access. Quality means that it's not that you've just seen a doctor, but you've seen a competent doctor who is able to diagnose actually the issues that you have. Because we've had issues in the past where people go to a clinic and they're having serious life-threatening diseases and they're given Panadol because that's what is there. So quality, and it's affordable such that you're not having to sell land just to get dialysis.
Yeah.
So quality of life. So but if the measure is then how many hospital buildings you have, and these buildings are looking like they've been imported from Singapore, is that progress? So and that's why sometimes people are cynical and they say they can't eat roads, right? So the dignity of life is actually the true measure. And part of what is happening, why I was saying it's partly a philosophical problem, is that there are people who, on the one hand, so in legal studies, in jurisprudence, there was a school of thought which was the positivists, and there was natural law theory of law. And natural law saw that law essentially is God-given, and certain principles are inherent in nature. Even when they were the drafters of the American Constitution would recognize certain rights are inalienable and inherent to the human person. Positivists, on the other hand, are more like ni ile sheria tunatunga na kenye tunasema ndo inakuwa. So it's about what we decide, and the danger, the dark side of positivism is that sometimes certain ends would be pursued for their own sake at the expense of the dignity of human life, such that unafurusha watu kwa makao yao ndio mjenge affordable housing.
I know, it reminds me of a scene in Game of Thrones of Daenerys Targaryen and her quest for power, and saying that, you know what, she's the rightful heir of the king's throne. I'm forgetting what the kingdom was called. And in the end, it ended up her being the whole kingdom being destroyed by the dragons breathing fire, the infighting that happened inside, and her ended up being betrayed now by Jon Snow. It's like being the queen of the ashes. And that is what you're saying, is that it makes no sense to want this and not care about the how.
Because it cannot be pursued for its own sake.
Yeah.
What is the end in mind?
Yeah, the people will live in those houses, should live in those houses. The people who you have kicked out to build these houses should live in those houses.
And when they're in those houses, do they have a meal?
Yeah, and anyway, I feel like we can really go into depth in this, but we only have an hour of our episode. So let's wrap it up with what will be in store for our viewers in this pre-2027 year.
Since we are wrapping up, and when we wrap up, it's not an invitation to further analysis. Let me just conclude by saying, like Professor Makau Mutua, when I look into my crystal ball,
Hey? I have some thoughts on him.
when I look into my crystal ball, President William Samoei Ruto is going nowhere. That is my submission.
Well, that is a reflection of who we are. If he's going nowhere, it's a reflection of who we are as a people.
And when we say nowhere, just a qualifier, it could be 2-term or it could be long-term.
Huh? Me, I don't have a crystal ball like Chaka. I may not agree with what our bishop here has said. But all I can say is that we can't leave it to the people who are the loudest on the TVs, the loudest in the radios, on top of the cars, always in front of a mic and a camera to make decisions about our lives. Kenya ni yetu, na sisi ndio kusema. So, gear up, guys. Pre-2027 is about being vigilant because the election has started. And elections are not rigged on election day. They are not rigged on the polling station. Hata venye tuliona huko by election in November, it didn't start that November.
And there are some in February.
Yeah. I'm just saying that elections, if we want a better tomorrow, the election has already started. And it's up to you to pay attention and participate and make that decision for the rest, where your livelihood would come. So don't get caught up on thinking about the presidency. Who is your MCA? Are they delivering? Those are the people we need to be auditing now. Who is another person who wants to be MCA and can they deliver what you want? Your governors. Who is the current governor? Is he delivering? And if he's not, who is an alternative option? Who will give you the city or the Nairobi or the Mombasa or whatever county that you come from that you want? Mambo ni hayo. Just let's focus right now on governors going down. Mambo ya presidency itasolviwa. But then we have to figure out, we have to start with our livelihoods because that's how we start to change our thinking, that's how we start to change our politics, and that's how we leave our country better for our children. So, without further ado, this is the end of our first episode of pre-2027. Tumesema hatuiti 2026. So, this whole year, get ready for that.
Get ready.
That's casual. And we're so grateful for you guys who have taken your time to watch us, but hit the subscribe button. If you're looking for a way to support this podcast, imagine that subscribe button goes a long way. And if you want to take it a further step, you can share this with someone who you think would get inspired or encouraged by this episode. Now, in the next following episodes, we'll definitely have our guests. We mentioned a couple of people who we plan to bring here. And more importantly, we are going to come to you guys. Tunataka comments zako fupi kwa streets. So if you may see one of us one day just asking you for a comment, please don't be shy.
Fungua roho.
Ongea. So till the next time, see you.